All right. Well, hello, everyone. It is noon, so we will go ahead and get started. Quickly, just want to introduce myself for those who may not know me. My name is Kelsey Scroggin, and I am the current EPP president. Just want to say thank you so much for joining us today for our first quarterly forum. If you haven't had an opportunity to join us before for one of our forums, I just want to give you a brief idea of what today's session will look like. So we'll start kind of with an event recap of what we've been up to since we last met in November. We'll talk about some of our upcoming events, and then we'll dive into our professional networking presentation. One thing I do want to note about today's presentation is at one point you will be asked to be in a breakout session. So if you could turn your video on for that portion of the event or for the entire portion of today's presentation, that would be greatly appreciated. Of course, we understand if you're in a place where you're not able to have your camera on, or if you're having lunch and you don't want everyone to see what you're eating today, no problem. But again, if you do come in a point of time that you're able to turn your video on, we'd greatly appreciate you doing so. So let's talk a little bit about what we've been up to since we last met in November. So one of the first things was a holiday social and toy donation drive that we hosted in conjunction with the Methodist Emerging Professionals program. And this was just truly a great night of networking with other emerging leaders in the healthcare industry while also giving back to our community. So we had a guest speaker from the Child Saving Institute join us that night to talk a little bit about their organization, volunteer opportunities, and then the Substitute Santa program, which is actually where our toy donations went to that evening. So I'm really proud to say that we were able to provide over $250 in books and toys for that program that night. And then in January, we hosted two separate events. One was a safe space training in collaboration with the LGBTQ plus Employee Alliance Group, where we had 29 participants that were able to join us for that training. And then we also volunteered with the United Way of the Midlands for their Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service for their Good on the Go, where we helped package 2,000 snack packs for Together Omaha. And then most recently, in collaboration with the Administrative Professionals Network, we were able to provide two free CPR training for faculty and staff. So lots of collaborations these past couple of months, and always looking for more ways to collaborate with some of our other ERGs on campus as well. So let's talk a little bit about what we have coming up. One of the first things is the Omaha Performing Arts Young Professionals Group reached out and is inviting EPP members to tour the Steelhouse Omaha on Friday, April 12th. This is just a small networking opportunity. You'll get a tour of the venue, and then they have a post-networking event that is from 6:30 to 8:30, again on Friday, April 12th. If you're interested, please RSV to Melissa. Her email address is there on the screen. You can also find it in our March newsletter, but they ask for RSVPs by April 8th. So that should be really fun if you're able to join us. And then Dr. Balasan Nova will be giving a presentation on April 18th from noon to 1. This will be a hybrid presentation on the harmful effects of stigmatizing language and the ways that it can impact patient care. So in-portion person will be in the Michael F. Sorrell Center, and then the online portion via Zoom. We ask that if you're able to join us, that you RSVP by Thursday, April 11th. That QR code will take you to our Engage page where you can RSVP there. And then we will also provide pizza for the first 20 in-person attendees that day. And then just a couple of save the dates for you for June events. So June 6th, we're hosting a speed networking event with the Methodist Emerging Professionals. So we'll have leaders from UNMC, Nebraska Medicine, Clarkson College, and Methodist Hospital in attendance at this event. You'll have an opportunity to network with them, learn a little bit more about their journey as well, which is also why we have Celeste here to talk to us a little bit about professional networking today and the tips and tricks so we can be better prepared for that event. And then we're also hosting our summer picnic again on Friday, June 28th, out at the Ruth and Bill Scott Student Plaza. So there'll be games, networking, opportunity to hang out with some friends, and then we'll also have free tacos for the first 50 people. And then finally, our leadership applications are currently open. So we are looking for individuals to join us for our next fiscal year in both the co-chair and the committee member positions. So this QR code will take you to the application. Within that application, there is a flyer that talks a little bit more about what all of these positions entail, both from the co-chair side and the committee member side. So if you're interested, we would love to have you join us. The deadline to apply is this Friday, but if you have any questions questions, I'll share my email in the chat. I would love to connect with you to talk to you a little bit more about that. And so with that, I am going to ask Amy, who is our membership co-chair, to introduce our guest speaker for the day. So Miss Amy.
All right, great. Thanks, Kelsey. So like she said, my name is Amy Bostic. I'm with Nebraska Medicine, and I am the membership committee co-chair. I'm happy to introduce our speaker, Celeste Spear, PhD, currently works at University of Nebraska-Lincoln as the Director of Organizational Development. So in this role, Spear builds and delivers professional development and mentorship programs for the over 5,000 staff members across campus. She has worked at UNL for about 15 years, previously as an academic advisor and a career coach. Spear also holds a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology and a Master of Arts in Mental Health Counseling. And in December of 2020, she completed her PhD in Educational Leadership. She is also a certified Gallup Strengths coach. So with that, I will turn it over to Celeste. Thanks.
Thank you for that introduction, and thanks for inviting me today. I'm excited to present this topic. I worked as a career coach in the College of Business for 6 years, and so I spent much of that time teaching professional networking, planning networking events, fielding questions about how to network well. So I'm happy to present on this topic. I actually just presented on it last week, and so hopefully I can share some of my expertise with you today. And I'm also open to questions as we go. So we are a small-ish group. I should be able to field questions as we go. Feel free to unmute and pop in, use the chat with a question. I am going to, sorry, I'm trying to get my screen right here. I am going to use the chat feature throughout. So go ahead and as I ask questions, use the chat to engage with each other. I can't see that chat as I'm presenting, so I'm going to rely on Kelsey or Amy to navigate. If any questions pop up in there, feel free to interrupt me. But we're actually going to start with a question in the chat, and that is, what is the hardest part about networking? So go ahead and respond in the chat, whatever you feel like sharing. Okay, and I'm going to have to switch my view here so I can see you all.
So currently, Celeste, we have small talk, knowing where to start. Someone said sometimes it feels forced and awkward small talk isn't fun.
Thank you. Thank you. So those are all really, really common things. We're going to touch on all of those things that you just mentioned. But I don't, as my introduction said, I am a strengths coach, so I don't just want to focus on the negative. So next question, what part of networking excites you the most? And Kelsey, if you could read off some of those things for me so I can see, that would be helpful.
We have meeting new people, getting to know my peers and learning from them. Being able to say hi to someone in the hallway, unique stories, and learning what excites people about what they do.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And my screen share is still working, right? You can still see my slide?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So today's agenda, just to set things up a little bit, I'm going to go through the importance of networking, but I'm not going to spend too much time there because you chose to come today. So chances are you already know that networking is important. We're going to talk about the preparation process because yes, you need to show up and actually do the networking, but the stuff that you do before you get there is actually really important to make sure that you have a good experience before you, while you're there. We're going to talk about some specific strategies to network well. We're going to cover some common challenges and some strategies for navigating those challenges. I am going to put you into small groups to talk through some specific scenarios, and it's a multiple choice, and you can talk through how you would handle those. And then if we have time, we'll do some Q&A. Just so you all know, I'm happy to share my slides, and my slides include notes with what I'm going to say out loud in the notes section of those slides. So if you'd like to take notes, feel free, but if you'd rather listen and get that content later, you sure can. I'd be happy to share. Okay, so with that, let's jump into why network. So the very first and most common answer is to advance your career, but there's lots of other ways that you might want to network. I actually just personally had an opportunity 2 weeks ago. I do new employee orientation at the University of Nebraska, and we have a resource fair with people from across campus that come. And one of those units that come is Union Bank and Trust. I've had a conversation monthly with Miranda from Union Bank and Trust at New Employee Orientation. She just asked me 2 weeks ago to be a board member on Lincoln Leadership. And so just from those casual conversations once a month that we had, getting to know each other, that led to a really cool professional opportunity for me. So those casual conversations can lead to opportunities for your career. It can improve your communication skills. Surprise, surprise, when we talk to strangers and leverage that skill set, it makes us better communicators. We can use those communication skills to advance or do better in our current jobs. It can help us build valuable relationships. So we all really appreciate those phone a friends, right? If we expand our network, we have more people to lean on to do our jobs better or to leverage them in our career advancement later. We all appreciate diversity and inclusion, right? And so this exchange of ideas and perspectives just gives us a wider idea of how people view the world. It can boost our confidence as we meet more people, get better at communicating, expand our networks, build those phone a friends. All of those things combine to build our confidence as professionals. It can help us assess our qualifications. And by this, I mean, if you're wanting to get a promotion or get on a board or whatever it is, by meeting other people, particularly your peers, you can see how you stack up against your peers. Oh, they have experience in this. Oh, they did this. That helps you know what skills or knowledge you might need to gain. It can connect you to new resources, generate new ideas, access to the hidden market. I have a slide specifically on this next. I talked about phone a friend before, get support and advice. And then I don't want you to think about networking as only a one-way street where you're getting something out of it. I want you to think about networking in terms of what can you contribute back. Even if you're a new or young professional, chances are you have something that you can contribute back. And then it improves our social well-being. And this is counterintuitive for us because our brains say, I don't want to talk to a new person. I don't want to meet a new person. I don't want to introduce myself to that person sitting next to me. Our brains say, I want to be left alone. But in reality, after you have an exchange with someone, your social well-being improves. Okay, so don't let your brain lie to you when you're standing in line at the grocery store or sitting next to someone at a professional conference. Introduce yourself, have that small talk conversation. Yes, it might be awkward. Yes, there might be some awkward silence, but your health and well-being will be better because of it. So I talked about the hidden job market before. So this slide is going to help us understand how employers look for people versus how people look for jobs. So on the left side of this pyramid, you're going to see how employers try to fill a position. They start at the bottom of the pyramid at an internal promotion. Do I currently have someone on my team that could do this role? And if the answer is no, they slowly work their way into other pools of people, like their close network, the expanded network, professional organizations, and so on and so forth. If all else fails, they'll post the job externally. And how do individuals look for jobs? They go on to Indeed.com, Google Jobs, right? They sit alone in their apartment on their computer looking at job boards. When in reality, they're just seeing a teeny tiny amount of jobs that actually exist. So approaching your professional development and job search from a networking perspective is really going to expand your access to that hidden job market. And the other thing, before we go into strategies, that I want to set the stage a little bit, and that's the idea of the strength of weak ties. So the strength of weak ties is getting access to the people that you know they know. So 2 steps away from you, okay? So on the left-hand side of your screen, you're going to see your strong tie. So you're the little green person in the middle. and then you have your strong ties around you. These are your family, your close friends, your close coworkers. Those are your strong ties. Now, those specific people might not be able to provide you the opportunities or the career advancement that you're looking for. But if you look at their connections, we're going to shift over to the right side of the page. If we take your strong connections and expand out to the people that they know, those are your weak ties. You have somebody in common, but you don't know them personally. When we expand out there, number one, there's a lot more people. But number two, they're going to be a much more diverse set of people, different jobs, different industries, different states, different, you name it. And that really is going to give you the network that you need for those opportunities or that career advancement. Now, I want to contrast these weak ties, which we can also call warm contacts, with cold contacts. Cold contacts are people that you have zero connection to. That's the telemarketer that calls up and has no connection to you, is going to try to sell you something. That doesn't go very far, right? But if you have a warm contact, if you have something in common, that outreach is easier. Hey, Kelsey referred me to you because she knew I was interested in working in XYZ. That gives you a foot in the door and more likely to be able to get a relationship going with that contact. So think about who your weak ties are. So now we're going to shift gears into preparation. We're going to dive into each one of these individually, but first we establish some goals. We analyze your current network, identify your networking channels, and then we're going to prepare for the specific event. So I want you to type some things in the chat here, and Kelsey, you don't need to read these to me, but just for you all to familiarize yourself or put some things out there. I want you to think about some of these questions. What's your ultimate career goal? What is your next step career goal? What are you passionate about? What skill do you need to learn? What do you want to learn more about? So answering these types of questions might give you an idea of what your goal might be in your networking. So instead of just showing up to a networking event, you might say, you know, I know in my next step for career, I'm going to need some experience with budgeting. I don't have any budgeting experience. So I'm looking to maybe get on a board or chair a committee or do something where I can get some experience, maybe fundraising or creating a budget or something like that. So now when I show up to a networking event, I have something specific in mind where I'm going to be seeking answers to that question or trying to make contact around that question, which gives me more to work with. So go ahead and type in the chat if you know the answers to any of these questions. That's going to help you think a little bit harder, but also give other folks who may be struggling with this question some ideas of what this might look like. I'll give you a minute just to do that. I know one thing that people are really wanting to learn about right now is AI. I don't know if you guys are doing a ton with that, but I know that that's really on a lot of people's minds right now at UNM. Okay, so I'm going to transition to the next step. Oh, I got a pro tip here for you. But what if you don't know? There's a lot of people, especially when I worked with students, they were leery about networking because they didn't know what they wanted to do. They didn't know what the next step of their career was going to be. And if they didn't know what they wanted to do, they didn't know what skills they needed to gain. So it's okay if you don't know the answer to that. Your goal then becomes to figure out what it is that you want to do. And so this almost becomes easier because people love to help people who don't know what they want to do. So your networking goal might simply become, or meet someone who does XYZ, or meet someone who works in this industry, or just meet someone who can tell me about their career path and how they got there. So don't worry if your goal is just exploratory. That's really common. So now we're going to analyze your current network, and we're going to use a strategy called your personal board of directors. So I'm going to give you lots of examples of types of people that could be on your board of directors. So we've all heard of having a mentor, which is wonderful, but sometimes one person isn't enough. And sometimes if we put all of our needs on one person, that's too much for that one person to ask of that one person. So I want you to think more broadly about the people in your network that could help support your career. mentor is obviously wonderful. If you have a mentor or want to have a mentor, I highly recommend, but don't feel like that's the one and only person that should be helping you with your career. Another person I recommend is an industry insider. So, you know, if for those of you who work in healthcare, I work in higher education, these industries are very specific, and it's really helpful to know how these industries work in order to know how to receive opportunities or how to get promotions. So, let's say, for example, you don't want to work in healthcare or you don't want to work in higher education. Let's say you want to transition to a nonprofit or a for-profit. Getting somebody who works in that industry will be really important for your career advancement. Finding a connector. We all know that person who seems to know everybody, right? So I'm friends, if you listen, this is a Lincoln station, so you probably don't, but in Lincoln, there's a station called 96 Kicks, and they have a radio DJ called Husker Nick, and he has been friends with my husband and I for over a decade. And he's been a radio DJ in Lincoln for 15 years, and he just knows everybody. So finding those connectors and having a relationship with those connectors can be really valuable. A visionary. So this is someone who sees your career bigger and better than you could ever have dreamed it. So I had someone early in my career. I was part of a professional organization, and I got an email, a call for proposals for a conference, quickly deleted it. I was a young professional. That wasn't for me until my boss's boss came to me and said, I think you should do this. I think you'd be great at it. And I was like, what? I don't have anything to share. And it wasn't until he explained to me what I could possibly present on and why he thought I would be good at it that I thought that I started to see myself in that way. So have people in your life that think bigger and better than you dream. The opposite of that is going to be a realist. You need someone in your corner that's going to give you some realistic feedback and not be afraid to hurt your feelings and say, this is unrealistic. You're going to need more experience for this, or whatever that realistic feedback is. A cheerleader, someone who's going to root you on when you're feeling really down. Could be your mom, that's okay, but have somebody who you could reach out to when you don't feel like that you can do it. Have a subject matter expert. So I'm fairly new in the field of organizational development. I've been in this role for 2 years, but this is a career pivot for me. So having someone who's done organizational development for many years is important for me, so that I can phone a friend and say, hey, I'm thinking about starting a mentorship program, never done this before. What should I be thinking about? An advocate. This is somebody who's at least two rungs above you in your organization, who can advocate in the rooms that you're not in. So for example, my boss's boss is Mike Zeleny. He's the Vice Chancellor for Business and Finance. I've made it clear to him that I'm interested in serving on boards or committees, and that if there's a volunteer opportunity where he's looking to submit a name for, a recommendation for, that I would be happy to do that. So building relationships with those people who can advocate on your behalf when you're not there is really important. And then finally, an organization insider. So if you're specifically interested in working for XYZ company, having a connection within that company is really helpful. They can put in a good word for you. They can say, hey, here's how the hiring process works here, or this type of experience or these types of characteristics are really important at XYZ company. And LinkedIn is a really great place to find some of those insider people, because if you click on a company within LinkedIn, it'll show you your connections that work there. Okay, so I want you to just real quick in the chat, I want you to look at this board of directors and identify one type of connection. Maybe it's a realist, maybe it's a connector. What is the most relevant type of person that you need to add to your network right now in this moment? And Kelsey, you can kind of give me some ideas of what people are saying.
We have advocate, connector, mentor, quite a few advocates and mentors, actually.
Excellent. Very good. Okay, so moving on. we're going to identify your networking channels. So I just mentioned LinkedIn. LinkedIn should definitely be something that you have and something that you're using regularly. I'm not going to I actually have a whole presentation on LinkedIn and how to leverage LinkedIn. But if you don't have it, or if you have a profile, but you're not using it or going onto it regularly, or it's not up to date, I want you to think about how you can be more active on LinkedIn. Social media, and definitely social media in the professional sense, is where you can really elevate your visibility. We talked about one of those reasons that you might network is to increase your visibility, and LinkedIn is a really great place to do that. Professional groups and organizations, you're already in this group, which is a perfect example of how you could be networking. Networking events and conferences. So look for opportunities. I have a personal goal of going to a conference or a networking event once or twice a year. So this doesn't have to be a ton, but set yourself a little bit of a goal. I'm not in a place in my career where I'm really looking to advance. So it might be more often if you're really looking to advance or do something different in your career. And then finally, informational interviews. This is my #1 absolute favorite form of networking. This is where you're going to reach out to somebody of interest, maybe somebody on that panel or that list that we just saw, and you're going to ask for 30 minutes or an hour of their time to pick their brain, ask them questions. So this is a strategy that I have leveraged many, many times. I've probably done this over 20 times in my career, where I've reached out to folks and requested an informational interview. I'm not going to do a deep dive on how to do this today, but if you Google how to do an informational interview or informational interview questions, you're going to find a ton of information online about how to do these. So I want you to think in your head, who is a person that I would like to talk to more, invite them for coffee, pick their brain. Think about that person. That might be an action step that you can write down for yourself right after this. Who could I reach out to after today to schedule a coffee with? And now we have our 4th step in the preparation process, and that is actually preparing for a networking event. So the first thing I want you to think about is what you're going to wear. Don't plan this at the last minute. I want you to dress slightly above where you think you should probably be in terms of how you look. And you don't want your outfit to be the star of the show. You want to be fairly professional and formal in how you look. Some mistakes that I see would be overly flashy patterns or jewelry that makes noise, wearing too much perfume or too much cologne, wearing shoes that are uncomfortable. So those are some really common mistakes that I see in what you wear. Determine a goal for the event. So like we talked broadly about having general networking goals, have a specific goal going into the event. I want to meet 2 new people could be your goal. Or I want to meet a specific person who works at XYZ company or does XYZ role. Or I know that this person is going to be there. I want to get to know them better. Could be any number of things, but have a goal for the event. Create an elevator pitch. Now, I'm hot and cold here on elevator pitches. What I don't want is for you to have 30 seconds of a scripted elevator pitch that makes you sound like a robot. But 1 or 2 lines that allows you to introduce yourself quickly is really helpful. For example, my elevator pitch is simply, "Hi, I'm Celeste. I'm the Director of Organizational Development at UNL. That means I create and deliver professional development programs for staff." So that's a way that I can introduce myself really quickly in a way that's more than just my title and gives people an idea of what I do on a day-to-day basis. So, and that's not something that just rolls off my tongue. That's something that I put some thought and energy into of how could I describe myself in a professional but quick way. Research the attendees and prepare questions before you go. So I know that you have a speed networking event coming up. So knowing who is going to be there, doing a little bit of research online to learn more about those people. You never want to ask a question that you could have Googled. So knowing a little bit about them before you go in, and then having some targeted questions like, I see that you used to work at XYZ company. I'm interested in how you got from there to here. It shows that person that you're talking to that you're interested in them enough to have done some homework ahead of time. So if you can have some targeted questions, that really reflects well on you. Don't be afraid, and I don't have one in front of me, but to have a padfolio, kind of those leather bound padfolios with a notebook and a pen inside. That allows you to write maybe some names and questions ahead of time so that you're not feeling like you have to have everything memorized when you get there. Taking notes reflects really well on you. It shows that you care and that you're paying attention. You might think, oh, I'll remember what they say, but you go to the next person and then everything kind of gets mumbled together, especially after you leave the event. So don't be afraid to write names and write notes as you go. Revise your LinkedIn and resume before you get there. So what you don't want to do is make a really great connection with someone. They add you on LinkedIn and then they see your LinkedIn profile from 5 years ago, or even worse, the one you created in college that you never went back to, right? So make sure that that information is up to date and your resume is up to date. Let's say they have a really cool opportunity for you. When I got asked to be on that board for Lincoln Leadership, I hadn't updated my resume in 2 years. So I really had to go through and update my resume really quickly in order to submit that application. So make sure those things are up to date before you get there. And then eat and drink before you go. You might be really excited that there's a great food buffet there, but if you spend your time thinking about being hungry or having dry mouth as you're trying to talk, it's not going to go well. So eat and drink before you get there, maybe even bring a water with you. Okay, we're going to talk about some specific networking strategies, but before we do, I'm actually going to break you into groups now and have you work through some strategies. So I am going to put a, sorry, Kelsey, I don't have, when I'm sharing my screen, I don't have any ability to access the chat. My tools are gone. So I am going to send you really quick the link for the scenarios. Does that work for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I sent it to your Gmail because we were having issues with your other email. Sorry about that. Kelsey and I have had the worst email communication troubles before today. As Kelsey is breaking you into groups, hopefully she's going to put a link to this document in the chat. And then I would like group 1 to actually stay in the main room because we are recording this presentation. We don't want silence for the next 10 minutes. And so if you can, group 1 can stay in here, that will give us something to record. Okay, I just was able to access the chat from my laptop screen here. So I did put the document in there. Can someone try to open it, make sure they have access to it? Give me a thumbs up if it works for you. Okay, perfect, thank you. So again, Kelsey's going to put you in groups. You're going to work your way through these networking scenarios. There's 4 options for each question. You don't have to agree or come to a consensus. Just pick what your response would be and why, and then we'll come back as a group together and talk through the answer. So I'm going to give you each 10 minutes in your small groups, and then I'll pull you back together.
You said group 1 should stay here, right?
Correct.
No, I apologize to everyone. I had to step away from my computer and join from my phone. Don't have a visual or anything, just audio.
No problem, Alex.
Problem?
I'm sorry, am I muted or can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Yeah, we can
I'm
hear
going
you.
to try to mute.
Can you hear us?
Dan! Yeah, I can hear everybody. I'm not like, I'm afraid there might be some wind noise.
Is this our group, Kelsey?
Yes, so you all are good to go. And I did share the screen so
Hi,
you
everyone.
can see those if someone wants to read off that first scenario.
Sure, I'll go. You enter a networking event alone. There are small groups of people gathered, but you're unsure how to break into a group. What do? Walk slowly around the event, scan for someone you recognize and join their group. B, walk slowly around the event, listen for topics of interest and join a group that's discussing a topic that's relevant to you. C, walk up to the first group in front of you and ask to join. Or D, find another person without a group and introduce yourself. Personally, I would probably be A.
Yeah, I have just been A and B in recent scenarios. And
It's
I've
always
tried
scary.
D. It's always more awkward, I feel like, to try D, because what if they're a dud? Alex probably can't, I don't know if he's having phone issues or sound issues, but we can maybe whip through these quickly if he's not able to chime in. I don't know.
Yeah, I find it easier to at least have one person that I know.
Yeah. Okay, so let's do the second one. Notice that we're not going to a small group and you notice someone hovering around your group. What do? Do you stay focused on the speaker in the group? You don't want to appear distracted. Do you shift your body to open up the room, make eye contact and smile at the new person? You separate from the group and introduce yourself to the new person. You stop the group's conversation, welcome the new person, and get them up to speed on the group's conversation.
And I think I would probably try to do B. That might be the best I could accomplish, though.
Yeah, that's my natural instinct too, but I feel like it depends too, because like if the like the power dynamic of the person you may be talking to, you don't want to like interrupt them or something, but my natural instinct would be to be more inclusive and the more the merrier in the conversation. So B is my inclination too.
Yeah, I think it definitely depends on what you're talking about as well. I mean, if it's just small talk, it might not make sense to get them all up to speed on the weather forecast for the last week or
Amen.
Okay. Number 3, you're networking with a small group. Someone says something that you relate to. What do? A, say nothing. You want to keep the focus on them, not shift it to you. B, say nothing, but plan to reach out afterward. C, look for an opportunity to add it to the conversation soon. Or D, interrupt so that the moment doesn't pass and to communicate your enthusiasm. This is so context dependent.
Yeah, I feel like I'm a D though, unfortunately.
Interruption is probably my biggest pet peeve. So I try not to interrupt anyone ever, which is bad because I do often lose my moment to chime in on something.
Yeah. Yeah, it totally depends though. Like I've had to catch myself sometimes in groups where I'm like, let's not have this spotlight go right to me, even though I can totally think in my brain of 7 things I could chime in on with this particular topic or whatever. But and I have done B, like I've chuckled to myself when someone says something, and then afterwards I'll send a quick email like, and that's kind of been a fun way to keep a conversation going too, because I could say, "Oh, it was nice to meet you," or "Nice to see you at this thing," and what you said about this, made me laugh. Here's a thing that was funny, and then it plays for a follow-up.
It's a good follow-up excuse. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. I probably tend towards C in general. Look for an opportunity to add it to the conversation and hope I don't lose my chance.
Hopefully it's still relevant. Yeah.
Equally awkwardly wait until it's 10 minutes later and then nobody remembers what you're talking about.
Yeah. Okay, you're networking in a small group with a professional you're interested in getting to know, but the conversation has veered into a topic that isn't relevant to you at all. What do? You stay in the group and try to remain engaged. You still might learn something. You stay in the group, but look for an opportunity to steer the conversation back to a topic that's relevant to you. Do you interject a question directly to the professional of interest that will catch their attention and demonstrate your interest in getting to know them? Or politely excuse yourself and seek out a new group? Plan to contact the professional later. That's tough.
So very context dependent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd probably just stick around and try to stay engaged.
Yeah, I think I would too. Yeah, especially if you're wanting to get to know them more, or like you're wanting to have an opportunity to, hearing what they know that you don't is actually probably very helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you might be able to find ways to connect it
It's
to
just rude to walk away.
Right.
Well, it does say politely excuse yourself, not rudely excuse yourself.
Oh. Missed that.
Yeah, that's probably the best. It's hard too, because this is where it feels more forced for me, where it's like, there's this end goal in mind with meeting this person or this, so the conversation part of this particular scenario might feel more forced for me.
Yeah.
So an opportunity just to listen might actually be a good practice for me anyway.
Yep, I agree with that. Hello.
Perfect. Okay, well, everyone else has about 45 seconds to rejoin the group, but if you guys still want to have a conversation about the weather today, you're welcome to.
I think I'll pass on that one.
There's sun. I'm seeing sunshine.
I don't have a window.
Thank you
Sun
to
is
those who
actually
were in
out.
group 1 who stayed in this room. I appreciate that. Kelsey, would you, oh, there you go. I was just gonna ask you to stop your recording. Did that change back over, Kelsey?
It did, yes.
Perfect. And you can let me know when folks are back.
Hey, we should be good to go.
Okay. All right, well, thank you everyone for participating in those scenarios. If you are like the people who have come before you, it was a lot of, it depends on the situation, depends on the context, depends on the people. People have different personalities. They feel, one person might feel more comfortable doing A, another might be B. For the most part, all of the responses were appropriate depending on the situation and depending on your personality. As we go through this next slide, I'm going to try to reference some of those examples and give you kind of maybe what I would have done or some of those context specific things to keep in mind. So here's some specific challenges that people face during networking and some specific strategies to navigate them. So one, appearing friendly and approachable, especially if you're nervous, you don't know anyone, it's really easy to close yourself off. So I can't demonstrate this very well on Zoom, but you're going to cross your arms, head down, maybe making eye contact. So if you're nervous, you're going to perhaps make yourself smaller or less willing to, or less approachable. So try to keep yourself, your body language open, chin up, a welcoming expression on your face. Those things are going to make you appear more approachable. Smile at people that you don't know, that make eye contact. Those are things that will help people come up to you or make you more welcoming if you were to approach someone. Entering into a conversation or a group. So this was question 1 on your scenarios, and this is one of the hardest things to do. Now, your speed networking that you're going to have later is really going to help this, because you don't have to enter those conversations, right? They're going to be created for you. But you're probably going to be in situations where you have to enter a group. Any of those strategies that I listed on there were absolutely fine to do. Depends on your personality, depends on the event. You might do any number of those things depending on the day. So all of them are absolutely fine. Welcoming new members into a group. So once you personally find a group to join, you don't want to be a bad group member for those new people that have arrived, because you were just them a couple minutes ago, right? So when you are a part of a small group and talking, I do want you to kind of watch those hovering people around you. So I probably wouldn't do A, which was to keep your focus in the group, unless I hate to say it, it's like a really important person, a bigwig, right? Where it would be really disrespectful for you to break away or to welcome that new member. That's pretty unlikely though to happen. For the most part, opening your body up, making eye contact, smiling at the new person, just kind of giving them some nonverbals that they're open to joining your group is probably one of the best and easiest strategies. The last one was stopping the conversation and welcoming the new person. I think this is a great strategy, but this is probably networking 2.0 for those of us who maybe have a little bit more experience navigating a networking situation. And it would also depend on who's talking, what they're talking about, and how well you know that person. So if this is a colleague that I know, I would say, hey, Kelsey, just a second. I think we have a new person who'd like to join. Join that new person and say, hi, I'm Celeste. What's your name? Kelly? Kelly, this is Kelsey. She was just talking us about the speed networking event coming up. Sorry about that, Kelsey. Go ahead. And so if that's how I would handle it, but that's a more advanced, like I said, networking strategy. So D is great, but takes a little bit more practice. Exiting a group or ending a conversation. We didn't have a question about this, but I'm going to give you 3 strategies on how to leave a conversation. So this might be, it's just coming to a natural close. It might be that this person is not a good match for you and you're trying to get out of it. It could be that the conversation never was a dud to begin with and you just need to get out of there. But here's my strategies. One is the white flag technique. So imagine, you're surrendering with a white flag. So you're going to give some sort of verbal cue that you'd like to wrap up the conversation. It might sound something like, I'd really like to connect with some other people while I'm here, but before I go, can you tell me more about that speed networking event that you're doing next month? I'd love to hear more about how you're planning to do that. And so now both parties know that you're planning to wrap up the conversation. So it's not just you trying to end the conversation. You can now work together to wrap up that conversation, okay? The second strategy is simply a compliment. I've really enjoyed talking with you today, or, I've really enjoyed getting to know you and learning more about what you do at UNMC. So complimenting them is a way to make them feel good before you move on to something else. And then the third, and this is only authentically if you'd like to connect, would be to talk about the future. I'd love to connect with you. Are you on LinkedIn? I'd love to do coffee sometime. Can we exchange information? So talking about the future is a way to signal that you're ready to wrap up the conversation. Biology is absolutely fine. So you can say, you know, I'd like to hit up the food line, or I need to use the restroom, I need to get a drink. All of those biology things are absolutely fine, but I would pair them with one of the 3 strategies that I just gave you. So you can say, hey, you know, I think I'm going to go grab another drink, but before I go, tell me more about that speed networking event. Or, gosh, you know, I've really enjoyed hearing about your role and what you do. And then say, you know, but I think I'm going to head to the bar and get another drink. So putting those things together can make the biology feel a little bit more authentic. Building the relationship after the event. So this is something that people really struggle with, is how do I take that conversation at that one point in time and turn it into something else? So one thing I like to do, add them on LinkedIn. Share something. Remember I said giving back is an important part of networking. Share something, an article, a podcast, a TED Talk that was relevant to the conversation that you had with them. Say, you know, reach out and say, hey, I ran across this. I thought it was really relevant to that conversation that we were having, so that you're already starting the relationship by giving something to them. And I already told you my favorite, an informational interview. If you want this relationship to go further, ask to schedule a coffee or an informational interview so that you can continue to learn more about them. And then finally, being a good conversationalist. Early on, when I asked you the most challenging part about networking, several people said small talk. So I'm going to give you some specific slides on small talk. So how do you get the conversation started? I'm not a huge fan of acronyms. I think people go a little crazy on the acronyms, but I'm going to give you an acronym: CPR. Context. Look around you. Have you been here before? Oh, I love your blazer. Where did you get that? Oh, what are you reading? Look at your visual cues and just ask something about the context. P, personal questions. What do you do for fun? Tell me about where you grew up. What was it like there? Do you have any plans for the weekend, or do you have anything you're looking forward to? Really, any question to get to them, to know them personally. And then finally, one of the easiest, if all else fails, recommendations. I'm looking for a new show on Netflix. What do you recommend? I'm going on vacation this summer, but I don't know where yet. Where's your favorite spot to travel? People love to give you their opinion on things. So this is a really easy go-to. Give me some recommendations. And then this slide is great for a professional networking context. So when you're thinking about speed dating, you're looking at those professionals, you're trying to think of questions to ask. These are ways that you could break down their career. And instead of just asking about that third one, we kind of get stuck sometimes on the responsibilities. What do you do? Think about other ways to ask about their career. Where did you go to school? Where did you start your career path? How did you get from here to there? Where do you want to go next? Are you always in the office? Are you in the field? What's the culture like there? You know, how do you learn and stay on top of new things in the field? What conferences do you go to? So these different categories are ways that you could ask different questions about their career. And again, I'll share these later, so don't feel like you have to write down everything. One thing that you don't want to do is try to ask questions just to sound smart. That's generally doesn't come off very well. So you really want these questions to be coming from a genuine place. And you don't want to ask like the hard-hitting questions. You're not an investigative journalist here. We don't want to create gotcha moments. Again, we want to be really authentic in our questions. So how do you keep the conversation flowing? Here's some of my strategies. Sometimes the conversation starts off well, and then what happens? You hit a lull, there's awkward silence, and then you panic, right? Like, I don't know what to say next. And we do one of two things. If there's awkward silence, we either bail, we're like, hey, nice to know you. And we like, I need to go to the bathroom. And we try to get out of there as fast as we can. Or we ramble because we don't like silence. And so we just keep talking and talking. So here's some strategies. If the conversation comes to a lull, tell me more. This is my 100% favorite. I use it all the time. So if I say, hey, Kelsey, how was your weekend? And she says, good, I went to my son's baseball tournament. I don't have to know anything about sons and baseball. I can just say, oh, tell me more. Second one is you can answer the question that you just asked them. So I'm going to pick on Kelsey here, but a good conversationalist is going to ask a question back to you, right? They're going to have a volley, but sometimes that doesn't happen. So I could say, hey, Kelsey, how was your weekend? And she could say, fine. Right? Instead of volleying it back to me. So what I can do is just answer the question I just asked her, even though she didn't ask it back. I can say, I had a good weekend too. I went to my niece's dance recital, and start talking about that. Okay. So I don't have to get the volley back. I can just ask myself the question. I can ask the same question back that they just asked you. So let's pretend that Kelsey started this interaction and she said, hey, Celeste, do you have any plans for the summer? And I said, I don't really right now. Instead of stopping right there, me as a conversational partner, I can ask that same question right back to her. I don't have any plans for the summer, do you? And then I don't have to be creative, right? She came up with the question. I just have to parrot it right back to her. I can change the topic completely. So let's say I ask about her weekend, I ask about her summer plans. Nothing's happening. She's not volleying. She's just giving me one-word responses. I can change the topic completely. I can go to recommendations. Hey, I'm looking for something to watch this weekend. What do you recommend? If I've done that 2 or 3 times and the conversation doesn't go anywhere, feel free to move along and say, it was nice to chat. See you next time. Okay. And then finally, get comfortable with silence. This is the biggest misconception with networking, is that you shouldn't have any silence, okay? Our brains need time to think of questions and think of responses. So ask your question and be okay with silence, or give your response and be okay with silence, okay? Giving yourself some of that time is absolutely fine. We're getting to the end here. We just have a couple more minutes. So I'm going to give you some final recommendations, and then I will give you some time for questions. So how can you tell if the conversation is going well? There's conversational turn taking, okay? It's not an interrogation. One person asks, one person answers, the other person asks, the other person answers, okay? It kind of goes back and forth. So you need to be a good partner on both sides. Times given for pauses and reflection. The depth slowly increases. So you can start with the weather. You can start with the Huskers or the NCAA tournament or whatever shallow thing is going on. But that should build toward something else, right? Like, oh, it's kind of a dreary day out there today, isn't it? Yeah, it is. Do you have any plans for the weekend? I don't know. Is it supposed to warm up this weekend? And then you can build toward plans for the weekend, and hopefully that conversation will find a little bit more meat. So you can start with something shallow, but it should work towards something more deep. And then finally, each party is using nonverbals. So you might have heard this phrase before. I want you to be a loud listener. Okay. Watch Oprah when she's interviewing someone. She's nodding her head. She's using her hands. She's mm-hmming. She's and or if she doesn't understand something, she's furrowing her brow. She's putting her hand up to her mouth. So that's a loud listener. The best interviewers are loud listeners. Okay. So I'm actually going to stop there. You'll have my slides. I'll give you a couple resources, and these are listed on my slides. But if you like social media, I recommend Charisma on Command. It's a YouTube channel, fantastic about getting better with your social skills. Charisma on Command. I really like the book Never Eat Alone. Keith, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Ferzazi, Never Eat Alone is probably one of the best networking books out there. And then if you like podcasts, Social Capital is one of the best podcasts on networking. So I'll leave you with some resources, and we just have a couple minutes for questions if there's any burning questions out there.
So if anyone has any questions, feel free to either put those in the chat, or you can unmute yourself as well.
So I was just going to make a comment rather than a question. So first of all, I see a lot of familiar faces that I networked with at YP Summit last week. So thank you for that. And so I guess second, Celeste, this really does bring me back to a session that I attended last week at the summit. And it was all about self-promotion. And I feel like a lot of this networking and self-promotion have a lot of common ideologies between the two, and how to present yourself, how to speak about yourself, how to address other people. So I think it's just so important, especially as we are looking at more virtual connections. Often now in our workplace, I think those are really important ideas to take away. So thank you for talking about those.
I would agree with that, Amy. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Other thoughts, comments, questions? Okay, well, thank you so much for having me. Greatly appreciated it. And anyone who wants my slides, I'll share them with Kelsey and she can send them your way.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Celeste, and thank you all for joining us today. We will get these slides and everything sent out in our upcoming newsletter. Be sure to check our Now channel and our Facebook page if you're not a member of that. We share different things on there, especially with our upcoming events. And I hope you save the dates for that June 6th speed networking event, as we're really looking forward to that. Thank you all and have a great day.